Hi, and welcome to the Adobe Illustrator in Under 10 tutorial series where we discuss techniques in Adobe Illustrator in under 10 minutes. In this tutorial, we are going to discuss 3D shapes in Adobe Illustrator. So let's get started. We're going to select the rectangle tool. And usually how we do this, select the letter M on our keyboard. We're going to click and we're going to drag this out. We're going to give it some color. Make sure we're able to see this. And we are going to remove the stroke just to make things easy. And let's just deselect this, and then we're going to make sure that we can see this head on in our artboard. I'm just going to move it to the middle right here, and then I'm going to make it into a 3D object. The easiest way for you to do that is to go to the Effect menu, 3D, and Extrude and Bevel. When we do that, we'll get an options box that pops up, and we're going to click the More Options button at the bottom so we can see everything all up front. Okay? Now, if we were to click this, we know that in the front we have this square here. This is basically telling us the positioning of our 3D object. We're going to click Preview just so we can see what it comes up to look like with our default options. When we click Preview, you'll notice now we have it facing in the exact same manner that we have it facing here. Very simple. And we can move this and push and pull this around and adjust accordingly. And our shape that's on the actual artboard will just move and rotate with respect to what we're adjusting here in this panel. And we can change these individually. We can change how it rotates around x-axis, y-axis, and our z-axis, which is the actual 360-degree rotation, or forward or backward. So this is how we're going to do it, like this. Flip it and move it this way. And we can also change how far the object extrudes. So we can increase and or decrease that to make it a thicker extrude. We can also change it to a solid cap or an open cap, which makes it hollow. Let's close that back up. And we can change the bevel type if we wanted it to have beveled edges. Now you notice as I did this, and it may be difficult to see, we have now beveled edges around our shape. If you pay attention to this area right here, you'll notice that it's beveled. It's not straight anymore, but if I were to take the bevel off and click None, and now it's straight again. Or I can go to Complex, and you'll notice it gives me a complex bevel. And we can change the height of the bevel itself so it's more extreme and more noticeable. We can also change how we want it to be if we want the bevel to go inward or outward. And then after we do that, we can actually come down here and we can change light intensity or the type of shading that we have. So plastic shading is the most complex. We have wireframe, no shading, diffuse, and plastic. We're going to leave it as plastic because plastic basically explains everything else. Now, on our object, we have a light source. We can move that light source to any place on the object and it will reflect updated once we change it on the actual object on our screen. We can actually add another object that's a light object, and we can push and pull that as well if we want to change and manipulate that. Or we could also take that light object and we could send it behind the object so that we get a light source from behind. And each source that we have selected, we can then change these properties. So this allows us to specify the brightness, and it goes from 0 to 100. And actually, we're going to just do this with one light source, and that one was behind, so you wouldn't have noticed anything. So we're going to do this with this one, and we're going to change it so that you can see how this adjusts accordingly, and it shows live on our object. We're going to change the amount of ambient light. We're going to increase that so you can see how that scatter light comes. The intensity of the overall highlight, we're going to decrease it. And we're going to change the size. We're going to make it smaller. And then our blend steps allows us to make it a smoother transition with our light intensity. As is, if you notice, same thing we do when we do smooth gradients. This allows us to do 256 transitional steps for the lighting, so that way it's more of a smoother gradation when you are actually lighting your object. And the shading color is set to black. We can always change it to custom, and then we can select the color that we want it to be. Let's say we pick a green and click OK, and now we have a green shading color. Okay, and we can preserve the spot colors, or we can draw hidden faces, which basically means it's going to render the faces that we cannot see I never have this selected, and the only reason is because it's just more processor intensive, and there's no point to it. We can then go back up. One thing I did not cover yet is the perspective. And if we were to click this and adjust it, we can change the perspective view that we have to make it more of an extreme perspective of the actual object. So let's go back down here. We're going to go to a highlight size and increase it. And we're going to decrease ambient light. And you'll notice how much more this is actually pinched in the perspective that we have. And let's, decrease the extrude depth. And let's add more ambient light just to show it a little bit better. Okay, so that's basically how you would use the 3D tool and get 3D objects in Adobe Illustrator. Now, there are other options for making an object 3D. Let's cover one real quick. For a circle, you would think that the best thing for you to do is to select the circle, draw it out, and then go to the same option that we just had. So we're going to go to Effect, 3D, Extrude, and Revolve. And what we're going to do is click this, click more options, but notice it keeps it flat. But you don't want that. You want an actual sphere, right? So what you would do in that instance is you would draw and then you would cut that circle once we have the circle out there, so that way you do get the half. Delete one side. We're going to connect the other side, close it off as a shape. Then what we're going to go to is Effect, 3D, and we're going to go to Revolve. And when we do this, the revolution revolves it around an axis. And we're going to preview this. And when we do that, now we have our circular shape. And we can rotate it, and you'll notice it's a perfect sphere. All right? And then we can, of course, just like we did with our previous shape, we can change the lighting and all the other options that we have here. So you just want to make sure that when you're doing a spherical object, you do not use the extrude and bevel option. You use the revolve option because it revolves it around the axis completely, and you have to take half of the shape in order for it to revolve it. Okay, so I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. You can find me online, www.theonewillfocus.com, and on all social media at TheOneWillFocus, all spelled out, TheOnewillFocus. If you have any questions, again, feel free to ask, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next tutorial. Take care.